I'm a game developer, and my character's leaving me messages. Now, I'm not an extreme techie kind of developer that has thousands of lines of code or anything like that. I use a pretty basic drag and drop system with platforms like Unreal and Blender, which for those that don't know, they're just other programs for 3D models. I design my templates in Photoshop, and I use as many free resources and assets as I can. So when I read that very first message, I thought for sure I had just mixed up one of the assets. The game I'm working on is a horror genre survival game that takes place in a hotel. Imagine waking up one day to find a hotel empty. The doors are chained shut from the inside, and the windows are now shuttered and sealed. The power cuts in and out. You have no contact with the outside, but you hear strange sounds and sometimes screams from other floors. The elevator is always a gamble, and something haunts the stairwells. Yeah, that's the hook. Ultimately, it's a survival game that repeats on a loop, and I've managed to make supplies randomly generated. What's in room 189 this time most likely won't be in there again, should you die and have to start over. And I finished making the core of the game a few days ago, so I was now in the, I guess it's called the alpha testing phase, meaning I would play some, document bugs and errors, fix them, and then do it all again. Once all this was complete and it was smooth, then I would add my story content that would provide the why this was happening. Ideally, I just rinse and repeat, then I move on to beta testing and get some fresh eyes on it. Now, I am the definitive indie developer who has no financial backing, so I have to have a real job that I had to go to. But all day at work, I was looking forward to playing my game, to just experiencing everything that I've done and made playable. Now, if I didn't experience any game-breaking bugs, I could play for hours. So when I finally got home and slipped into my comfy clothes, I cracked open a beer, turned on my game, and I was immediately disappointed that it didn't work right. The character is supposed to start with waking up to a fuzzy television in a dimly lit room, confused as to why the windows are sealed and not letting any light through. I have lines of text that's supposed to appear on screen and everything, but instead I started this game in the bathroom. I made a note of the startup error and used my character to look around the room. The game is played in the first-person perspective, which made it easy to examine the textures of the bathroom. The mirror caught my eye immediately. I don't really have reflections because they're kind of advanced, so I went with a still image cop-out, meaning when I press the inspect button, I'm shown a still image of a mirror. And my character is supposed to say, "Oh, it's just a mirror." But that's not what happened, because the mirror had something written on it, something in what looked like blood. When I pressed the button to inspect, text popped up, "Please help me." I squinted, confused, because this wasn't part of the introduction. This wasn't even a procedurally generated event. Not mine, at least. And it had to have been an add-on from an asset I used. And it was a good one, though. Whatever error had made this happen was a blessing in disguise, because it made sense now to have some rooms with messages. So I added the idea to my notes and continued to play my game. As the player, I exited the bathroom and walked into the living room. On the wall was a calendar that showed today as Tuesday the 1st. I set it up this way so the player could see the days get ticked off the longer they survived. Thankfully, the rest of my session was smooth. There was no big errors or glaring mistakes. The audio was good, and I even let myself jump a little when I tried to force a door open and was rewarded with something in that room trying to get out, which was just a simple randomized event. I played for 2 hours, gathering supplies, hoarding them back in my starting room. All the while, I made notes on everything from the number of supplies needed and found to the proper level of lighting and the frequency of creepy events that occurred on day 1. The game was designed to not have anything too crazy happen that first night. This was just a tutorial, just a welcoming. It was designed to make the player feel unsure but still eager. Night 2 is when the player would encounter enemies. I did not save it though. I wanted to start my next test as a new player would and see if that startup error would repeat or go away once I double checked everything on my end. When I logged off and checked the startup scene, I couldn't find anything at all that would cause such an event. I searched the keywords "please help me," and I couldn't find anything. It was like that situation didn't exist in my game, yet somehow I had seen it. But, that's the point of testing. I finished, went to sleep, got up the next morning, went to work, and came home to assess it all again. I started the game up and loaded properly this time. My character sat up from the bed, looked around the room, saw the white noise on the TV, and said, in a confused tone. My own recording, of course. When my character stood up and went to the sealed window, the text I had set up appeared. The windows are sealed. This doesn't feel right. What is going on? At this point, I have control over the character, so I explored my room, then went into the bathroom. The mirror was normal. When I inspected it this time, it said, "It's just a mirror." So whatever bug had occurred yesterday had resolved itself. I sighed relief. At least the game started up properly this time. I had my character exit the bathroom and go into the living room. The calendar showed Tuesday, day 1. Thankfully, that worked both times. I then left the safety of the main room. The hall was designed to become increasingly worn and destroyed or creepy as the day went on. One day, the hall would be completely normal, like any other hall. However, when the loading screen ended and I was in the hallway, I was facing a wall with words on it. Before inspecting it, it looked just like a red blur, so I thought the words from the mirror, "Please help me," had just loaded into the hallway instead of the mirror. But that's not what happened. When I inspected it, the text read, "Endlessly trapped. Need to get out." None of this was part of the game. I mean, sure, it was creepy and it made for a nice addition, but I hadn't thought of this. I mean, this was comparable to Stephen King was reading his rough draft and saw Pennywise say something new that he hadn't written. I made another note, but I felt my whole mental change. Confusion overtook me. It was great for the atmosphere. I mean, if someone else was playing this, I'm sure they would be impressed, but I can't take credit for something I didn't do. There was an error somewhere. One of the codes or assets must have had a backdoor virus or something attached to it. Something that lets someone else add text to my game. At that point in time, that was the only logical explanation. So I logged off and I unplugged my computer from the internet. If something was new tomorrow, that ruled out a hacker. I laid in bed for far too long. My mind wouldn't stop thinking about how someone could get into my game. Then as I finally started to feel tired, I wondered what it would be like if I was the one stuck in that hotel. I woke up late, wouldn't have nearly enough time to get to work, so I called and told them that I wasn't feeling well. They said with everything going on in the world, it was best just not to come in. It was one of the only good things about the pandemic situation. I made myself breakfast, cleaned up, and sat down at my computer. When I turned it on, an error message popped up telling me I was offline. I clicked OK and opened my game. The familiar welcome screen, the haunting ambient sound I downloaded, and the option to start a new game. I clicked it, then started in the room. My character sat up, looked at the TV with a He then turned to the window as he should, and said, "The windows are sealed. This doesn't feel right. What's going on?" Everything was going smooth. I walked into the bathroom. The mirror was fine. I stepped outside and into the hall. No message. I let myself feel relieved, but only long enough to realize that meant I had a hacker somewhere messing with my game. I guess that was something I could fix later. So I continued to play my game. I scavenged everything I could from the open rooms. The game was set to only have some rooms available each day, making the point of the game to risk being outside of the safe room as long as possible, while exploring the newly unlocked rooms, and revisiting old rooms with found keys and tools. A considerably basic survival algorithm. I finished night 1 and sent my character to bed. Starting day 2. This time the day begins with the player hearing a scream from somewhere down the hall. This tells the player that someone else might be alive in the hotel. I moved my character to the door and stopped. Something, again unscripted, was written on the inside of the door. So I inspected it. Why am I here? What happened to everyone? In real life, I leaned forward curiously. This was definitely not part of my game. But I played on, repeating the adventure of the game. Only on day 2, the power cuts off, and noises can be heard behind doors. But I was less concerned with finding errors or bugs, and more concerned with whatever my game was doing without me. I ended night 2 and began day 3. This time, monsters would appear throughout the hotel. The elevator was no longer safe, and something haunted the halls and the stairwells. Each day was meant to increase in danger and add new threats. I started day 3 with another message, this time on the wall by the bathroom. Who are you? Why are you doing this? I continued playing, avoiding the dangers that were now jumping at me. I collected supplies, gathered key items. I was still really early into exploration. At one point, a shadow off the wall grabbed my character, causing some low-level damage that blurred my screen. I pulled away and returned to the safe room where I was able to bandage myself up and end night 3. So began day 4. The message this time, please don't make me go back out there. Whatever program was adding these messages, I wanted to learn it, to figure it out, which meant I had to continue playing. On day 4, the rooms became dangerous too. The character would have to shine a flashlight inside and check for lurking shadows before entering. If the light fell on one, it just meant the player needed to back out of the room slowly to avoid taking damage. It was technically still an open room, but due to the random event, those rooms would be inaccessible. I played through day 4. I wasn't really concerned with gathering supplies anymore. I had accumulated enough food and water. I made a note to lower the surplus generator, because what was the point of a hunger and thirst mechanic if there was an abundance of both? I ended day 4, and as day 5 started, in real life I stood up from my desk to stretch. Several hours had gone by now. I needed to stop and eat lunch, so I saved clothes and took a break. I wasn't even hungry, but I knew I would be now that I had stood up. It was always how it went. The hunger was hiding and waiting while my body was still, but as soon as I start moving again, it would roar to life. So I made a roast beef sandwich, extra mustard, and I grabbed some chips. I didn't go back to my computer while I ate. It's not a rule or anything, I just didn't feel like it. I almost didn't feel like getting back in the game at all. But I needed to. For curiosity's sake, and for the sake of actually finishing my game. I washed my hands and sat down. When I logged back in, my character was sitting in the corner, crying. I hadn't animated crying. I hadn't voiced the whimpering, terrified sounds he now made. I panned the camera towards the wall and looked at what he, or I guess, the character had carved into the wall with a knife. I am in hell. I am afraid and I am going to die. For what? I stared at the message. It was disturbing. For several reasons, but the glaring obvious reason was this made me physically and mentally uncomfortable. My character, this fake created artificial life, was apparently feeling and living in this nightmare I had created. I don't know how. None of it made sense, and if it was a prank from some hacker, it was insanely good. But this didn't feel like a prank. Not anymore. This felt personal. Unfortunately, day 5 is when things got brutal. It was when the power cuts off for good, and if the player has enough supplies, they'd be fine. But if not, day 5 was basically a death sentence. I had developed the game. I knew what to prepare for, so I had gathered everything I needed to survive beyond day 5. I wasn't worried about batteries, but I was worried for my character. I played through day 5 safely, making sure not to take any damage or put my character in any immediate danger. I still had to explore, but I actively avoided things that would trigger events. I ended night 5. On day 6, nothing else would be introduced, but now everything was bumped up to a much more serious and deadly game. As day 6 began, I realized that my character didn't get out of bed when I went to move. I shook my mouse and pressed the W key to move. My player slowly sat up and started to weep. A pitiful sound. I pressed the walk key again. This ended that crying animation, and now my character walked forward, under my control. In-game, I exited the room and made my way to the stairs. The elevator was inoperable by now, forcing the player to use the haunted stairwell. I opened the door to the stairwell and began running up to the next floor. A sound triggered, a moan followed by a shriek. This let me know that I needed to get out of the stairwell now, on whatever floor I was on, or risk being killed instantly. I ran inside, and the next random event triggered, a pair of eyes at the end of the hall and a snarling sound. It's just bad luck. Only thing to do was to rush into a room. I sprinted to the side and opened the door quickly. Too quick. I hadn't had time to shine a light when the door opened. The shadow figure that was staring out of the sealed window howled and spun around, alerted by me not having the time to check the room. It was a careless mistake, designed to jump scare my players. This time it worked on me. My character screamed, and I jumped in my chair. This was not something I had added. The character screamed and collapsed to the floor as the point of view fell. I slammed the keys to turn and run. I had set up these room and events to give the player time to react while the shadow creature howled. But this character, he didn't respond. He sank to the floor and screamed as the monster tore into him. A message in red appeared on the screen. You died. A simple, resolute message that sent chills down my arms and made me feel sick. I immediately hit play again. I just had to see what would happen. The game started up correctly. No messages, no hesitations. I went through the motions of exploring the first room. I checked the mirror, checked the windows, checked the calendar. And that's when I saw a new line of text. It's the first again. I am alive again. And I am going to die again. I exited the inspect and moved my character to the door. I pressed the button to open it, but he didn't reach out. The door didn't open, and in my headphones I could hear him whimpering. I turned the volume up to try and make out what he was barely saying, and his words made me feel sick. Don't make me go out there again. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for whatever I did. But please don't make me start again. I force closed the game and shut down my computer immediately. I didn't want to send him back out there. But now I don't know what to do. If it's even real, it can't be real. That's insane, but it feels real. Part of me wants to delete the game, save him from having to leave that room again. But would that kill him too? And the other part of me, the dark and curious part, wonders if this game could make me, the developer, feel this way. What would it do when it's finished, with a worldwide release? Hey everyone, Gloom here. I hope you enjoyed listening to part 1 of my story. Go ahead and hit the bell icon so you're notified when part 2 is up. Now I'd like to take a minute to thank each and every one of you that has subscribed to the channel. And since YouTube lets me know who is subscribed when they comment, I just want you to know that I'm always so excited to see familiar faces in the comments. Now if you just can't wait for the next video, go ahead and check out some of the previous videos on my channel. Also make sure to click the link in the description to pick up a copy of my books on Amazon. Now that's all for tonight. Stay safe out there.